The diplomatic station orbited quietly between Earth and the outer colonies, where humanity had spread across 12 systems in less than 2 centuries, and the galaxy had finally noticed them, and not everyone was pleased about it, Lieutenant.
Oh, Jake.
Morrison stood at attention in the briefing room of the frontier station Delta 7 and his commanding officer. Colonel Harris paced before the gathered crew, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a blade, because everyone knew what was coming, and the rumors had been spreading for weeks that First Contact was about to become very complicated, whose had made a name for themselves in the galaxy, and not always a good one, and they fought when cornered, and they refused to back down from threats that would make other species surrender immediately, and they had this annoying habit of surviving things that should have killed them. And now the Valdari Empire wanted to test them and wanted to see if humanity was really as stubborn. As the stories claimeth, Valdari were tall and elegant, and their women especially were known across the galaxy as the most beautiful and most deadly in their empire. Stretched across 40 systems, and they had never lost a war in 3,000 years, and they sent an ambassador to Delta 7, and her name was Kyra Velthorin, and she was coming to deliver an ultimatum. Jake had seen pictures of Valdari before, and they looked almost human, except for the slight luminescence of their skin, and the way their eyes held colors that shifted like nebulas in their bone. Structure was sharper and more defined, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost supernatural, and Kyra was said to be one of their finest warriors before she became. A diplomat docking bay pressurized with a hiss, and the airlock opened, and Jake watched from his position near the entrance corridor, and the honor guard stood ready in crisp uniforms, and Colonel Harris waited at the front, and then she appeared, walked through the airlock with a confidence that stopped Jake in his tracks, and she wore the traditional Valdari diplomatic gown, which was a flowing thing of silver and deep blue that seemed to catch light that was not even there, and her hair was long and dark with streaks of white that framed her face, and her eyes were the color of distant stars, and purple and gold. An endless but it was her expression that caught him, and she looked directly at the human delegation, and she smiled. And it was not the polite diplomatic smile he expected, and it was challenging and fierce, and it said she knew exactly what humanity was, and she was not. Fred Colonel Harris stepped forward and welcomed Ambassador Kyra, and his voice was formal and measured, and Kira responded in perfect English, which surprised everyone, because most Valdari refused to speak human languages and considered them. Krudesh walked past the honor guard, and as she did, she reached up and unclasped something at her shoulder, and the ornate diplomatic gown fell away in one smooth motion, and underneath she wore the combat suit of a Valdari warrior, in form-fitting in darkest space and marked with honors and scars, and the entire delegation went silent. Jake felt his hand move toward his sidearm, and every other guard did the same, and Colonel Harris raised his hand to stop them, and Kyra kept walking and kept that smile on her face, and she stopped directly in front of Jake and looked up at him, and he was taller by half a foot, but somehow she seemed to tower over him. Human said, and her voice was like music and like thunder at the same time. And you are the one they call Morrison, and the one who held the line at Kepler Station when the raiders attacked, and the one who carried 6 wounded through a hull breach and refused to leave anyone behind. Jake did not know what to say, and he had not expected to be singled out, and he managed a stiff nod, and Kyra stepped closer, and her eyes scanned him like she was reading every thought he ever had. The Valdari Empire has heard much about your species, she said, and louder now so everyone could hear, and we have heard you are reckless, and that you throw yourselves into danger without thought, and that you bond with creatures and ideas and people with a foolishness that defies logic, and we have heard that you do not know when to surrender. Paused, and the smile grew wider, and we find this fascinating. Kola Harris cleared his throat, and Ambassador Kyra, he said, and his voice was tight, and perhaps we should move to the conference room and discuss the terms of your visit. Kyra turned to face him, and she inclined her head. And yes, she said, and but first I must make something clear, and the Valdari Empire did not send me here to negotiate, and they sent me here to understand and to test and to see If humans are truly what the galaxy fears they are becoming, I've looked back at Jake, and I believe I already have my answer. Conference room was designed for formal meetings and long table and comfortable chairs and display, screens showing maps of human and Faldari. Space and Kyra sat at one end, and Colonel Harris at the other, and Jake stood along the wall with three. Other officers and Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez and Sergeant Chris Bailey and Ensign Kate. Summer Scara placed her hands flat on the table, and the Valdari Empire has a proposal, she said, and one that will determine the future of human expansion. Harris leaned forward, and we are Listanaju, have spread quickly, she said, and two, quickly by galactic standards, and you have colonized worlds that other species would take centuries to terraform, and you have done it in decades, and you fight with a ferocity that unsettles the Council of Aligned Worlds, and they fear you will not stop until you have consumed everything in your pathway. Colonize uninhabited worlds, Jake said before he could stop himself, and we have not taken anything from. Enya Nakira turned to look at him, and her expression softened slightly. And no, she said, and you have not, but that is not what frightens them, and what frightens them is that you do not need to take anything. You simply exist in space as others cannot, and you thrive in conditions that would break other species, and you do it. While smiling and singing and forming bonds that make you stronger, stood and walked around. The table and the Valdari have studied you, and we have watched your wars and your peace and your art and your sacrifice, and we have seen you jump into fires to save strangers and charge into certain death for ideas. You believe in and throw yourselves against impossible odds because someone has stopped behind. Jake and he felt her presence like heat against his back, and the Empire wants to know if you can be trusted. Colonel Harris stood as well, and his jaw set, and we have been peaceful with every species. We have encountered and we have honored every treaty and defended every ally, and if the Valdari have concerns, we will address them, but we will not be. Nedkia laughed. And it was genuine and bright and human, she said, and always so quick to defiance, and I did not threaten you, Colonel. And I simply stated fact, and the Faldari want to know what humans are, and I volunteered to find out. Shay moved back around the table, and the test is simple. She said, and I will remain on this station for 30 days, and I will observe your crew, and your culture, and your way of life, and at the end, I will report to the Empire whether humanity should be welcomed fully into the galactic community, or whether you should be contained and monitored and limited in your expansion. The room went cold, and Colonel Harris's voice dropped, and if you decide we should be contained, then the Valdari fleet will enforce, Kyra said, and without hesitation. And do not mistake this for weakness, Colonel, and the Empire has ended civilizations before. And we do not wish to end yours, but we will if we must. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, and his hands clenched, and he saw Maya stiffen beside him, and Chris' hand moved toward his weapon again, and Colonel Harris raised his hand once. Moreo, we'll have your 30 days, he said, and then at the end, we will have our answer. Kyra smiled again, and I look forward to IFA next. Morning, Jake was assigned as Kyra direct liaison, and which meant he had to escort her everywhere and answer her questions and keep her from getting into restricted areas, and he was not happy about it, and neither was she apparently. Do not need a guard, she said as they walked through the station common area and where crew members were eating breakfast and playing cards and watching entertainment feed. Sue are not under guard, Jake said, and you are under observation, and there is a difference. Seka stopped walking and turned to face him, and what is that? Difference, you can leave whenever you want, he said. And a guard would stop. You studied him for a long moment, and then nodded, and fair enough, she said, and then tell me. Jake Morrison, why do those three humans over there keep looking at me and whispering? Jake glanced over and saw a group of engineers huddled at a table and stealing looks at Kyra, and he sighed, and because you are the first Valdari most of them have ever seen in person, and because you are beautiful, and because you dropped your dress in the middle of a formal greeting and walked in wearing combat gear. Kyra tilted her head, and which of those reasons is the most important, Trably? The dress thing, Jake admitted, and the fact that you smiled while doing it. Good? she said, and I wanted them to understand I am not here to play diplomat, and I am here to see what humans really are, and not what they pretend to be in formal meetings. The continued walking in Kyra. Ask questions about everything, and why did that man nod at Jake, and why was that woman laughing, and why did those two hold hands, and why did someone pin pictures of their family on the wall, and why did the crew eat together instead of in their quarters? Jake answered as best he could and tried to explain.